Chapter 5. Absolutely not. Sam folded his arms across his chest, leaning against the honey shed with what he hoped was unmistakable finality. I don't do festivals. Marta stood in front of him, undeterred by his refusal, her hands planted firmly on her hips. The morning sun caught the silver streaks in her dark hair, giving her the appearance of being haloed in light, an effect completely at odds with the devilish determination in her eyes. You've said that every year for 3 decades, Sam, and every year I ignore you. She adjusted her Blue Moon Cafe cap with practiced authority. The Harbor Pointe Summer Festival needs all hands on deck, and yours are particularly useful. Strong, capable, and currently unoccupied. Sam scowled at her assessment. I'm harvesting honey this week, very occupied. The festival's not until Saturday. That gives you 4 whole days to finish your sticky business. Marta grinned at her own joke. Besides, I'm only asking for a few hours of setup, not your firstborn child. If I had a firstborn child, I'd offer them instead. Marta laughed, the sound echoing across the apiary where Sam had been peacefully checking hives before her arrival. You're not as intimidating as you think, you know. I've known you since you were stealing penny candy from Bill Carter's store. I paid for that candy, Sam muttered. Eventually. Uh-huh. Marta's expression softened slightly. Look, we need the tall ladders secured along the pier for the lanterns. Bill tried last year and nearly broke his neck. You know the right knots and you're not afraid of heights. Sam sighed, recognizing the tactical shift. Marta always started with demands, then pivoted to practical reasons why only he could handle a certain task. It was manipulative, effective, and unfortunately, usually accurate. 2 hours, he conceded grudgingly. I secure the ladders, then I leave. 4 hours, Marta countered. Ladders and hanging the lanterns. The tourists love those paper lanterns. Tourists? Sam snorted. Town's been overrun lately. Town's been exactly as busy as it is every summer. You just notice more because a certain newcomer has got you paying attention again. Marta's eyes twinkled. Speaking of whom? Don't, Sam warned, but it was too late. Ellie's on the decorating committee, Marta continued, ignoring his glare. She volunteered right away, said she's always loved community events. She'll be hanging bunting and arranging flowers while you're up on those ladders. Sam stared stonily at the nearest beehive, refusing to acknowledge the way his pulse had quickened at the mention of Ellie's name. 3 weeks had passed since their encounter on the beach. 3 weeks of carefully casual greetings at the Saturday market, of brief conversations about honey and weather, of pretending he didn't notice the way she looked at him, with curiosity instead of pity, with interest instead of the careful avoidance most Harbor Pointe residents had mastered over the years. I don't care who else is helping, he said finally. 3 hours, not a minute more. Marta's triumphant smile told him she'd gotten exactly what she wanted. Perfect. 8 o'clock Saturday morning at the pier. Wear something that can get dirty. She turned to go, then paused. Oh, and Sam? Try not to scare off the other volunteers with that face. It might work on your bees, but humans require occasional smiles. I'll smile when there's something to smile about, Sam called after her retreating figure, but the corner of his mouth twitched upward all the same. Marta had been bullying him into community participation for 30 years, and though he complained, he secretly appreciated her refusal to let him become completely isolated. Not that he'd ever admit it. The Harbor Pointe Summer Festival. Saturday morning arrived with frustrating perfection. Clear skies, gentle breeze, temperature mild enough for comfort, but warm enough to promise a perfect day for a summer festival. Sam had hoped for rain, for fog, for any meteorological excuse to avoid his promised labor. Instead, he drove reluctantly toward town at 7:45, a toolbox and work gloves on the passenger seat beside him. The harbor bustled with early activity when he arrived. Trucks unloaded tables and tents. Volunteers in matching blue t-shirts arranged chairs and hung signs, and in the center of it all stood Lena Tran, gallery owner and perennial festival coordinator, clipboard in hand as she directed traffic like a general on mission. Sam parked at the edge of the lot, as far from the chaos as possible. He'd barely stepped from his truck when Lena spotted him, her face lighting with relief. "Sam!" Thank goodness, the ladder team's already started, but they're arguing about knots. Can you please settle it before they drop a teenager into the harbor? Without waiting for a response, she turned to shout instructions at a group attempting to erect a ticket booth. Sam sighed, grabbed his toolbox, and headed toward the pier where, indeed, a heated discussion about proper knot-tying techniques appeared to be underway. He recognized most of the volunteers. Deputy Ramirez, off-duty but still managing to look official, Bill Carter, whose hardware store had supplied most of the equipment, and 3 teenage boys who worked summer jobs on the charter fishing boats. They surrounded a precarious-looking ladder propped against the pier railing, gesturing at ropes and arguing with the intensity of men who each believed they possessed superior technical knowledge. "You'll kill us all with that granny knot," one of the boys insisted. "It's slipping already." "It's not a granny knot, it's a surgeon's knot. My grandfather was a surgeon," Bill replied indignantly. Deputy Ramirez spotted Sam approaching and visibly relaxed. "Voice of experience has arrived. Sam, please tell these gentlemen the proper way to secure a ladder before we have an incident report to file." Sam set down his toolbox and surveyed the situation with a critical eye. "You're all wrong," he said flatly. "That's neither a granny knot nor a surgeon's knot. It's just a mess." He moved forward, untying the tangled ropes. "For ladder security, you want a round turn and 2 half hitches, followed by a safety. Like this." He demonstrated, his scarred hands moving with the fluid confidence that came from years of practical experience. The men watched in silence, egos temporarily set aside in the face of genuine expertise. "Where'd you learn that?" one of the teenagers asked as Sam tested the finished knot with a sharp tug. "Coast Guard, father," Sam replied shortly, "then logging, then beekeeping. Knots matter in all 3. Deputy Ramirez nodded approvingly. "That's not going anywhere. Show us again on the next ladder?" For the next hour, Sam conducted an impromptu lesson in nautical knots as they secured ladders along the length of the pier. The work absorbed him, the familiar patterns of rope and the technical challenge pushing all other thoughts aside. He barely noticed the festival setup continuing around them, the growing bustle as more volunteers arrived. "Mr. Watson!" Looking very seafaring today. The voice pulled him from his concentration. Ellie stood a few feet away, her arms full of blue and white bunting, her hair escaping its usual messy knot in wispy tendrils around her face. She wore paint-splattered jeans and a faded Harbor Pointe lighthouse t-shirt that had seen better days. "Ms. Roberts," he acknowledged, suddenly aware of the sweat dampening his own shirt and the rough state of his hands after an hour of rope work. "Ellie," she corrected automatically. "Marta said you'd been pressed into service. I see she wasn't exaggerating about your knot expertise." One of the teenagers snickered, and Sam shot him a quelling look before turning back to Ellie. "Just basic safety." "Well, your basic safety looks a lot more professional than what I'm doing with this bunting." "The staple gun and I are having creative differences. Any chance I could use those magic hands of yours for a few minutes?" The teenager snickered again, earning an elbow in the ribs from Deputy Ramirez. Sam felt heat rise in his face, though Ellie's expression remained perfectly innocent, as if unaware of any double meaning in her words. "Go ahead, Sam," Ramirez said. "We can finish the last 2 ladders. You've shown us the technique." Sam hesitated, then nodded curtly. "Fine. Where's this bunting issue?" Ellie led him toward the row of vendor stalls being set up along the boardwalk. "Over here. I'm supposed to hang this along the front of each booth, but the staple gun keeps jamming. Lena says I'm not holding it right, but she got called away to a banner emergency before she could show me. The stalls stood in various states of assembly, their bare wooden frames waiting for the decorative touches that would transform them into a festive marketplace. Sam examined the staple gun Ellie handed him, quickly identifying the problem. "Loaded it backward," he said, flipping the magazine and reloading it correctly. "Common mistake." "I'm sure it is for normal people who use tools," Ellie agreed cheerfully. "My toolbox at home contains exactly 1 hammer, 3 mismatched screwdrivers, and whatever Allen wrenches came with IKEA furniture. The hammer gets used for everything." "Including stapling?" "Especially stapling. You'd be amazed what you can accomplish with a hammer and determination." The corner of Sam's mouth twitched. "I'll take your word for it." He held up the now functional staple gun. "Want me to show you how to use this properly, or should I just do it?" "Show me, please." I'm a firm believer in learning new skills, even at my advanced age. "Advanced?" Sam raised an eyebrow. "You're what, 45? "Flatterer. 48. Thank you very much." Ellie grinned. "But yes, most people my age have their skill sets firmly established. I'm trying to remain teachable." Admirable quality. Sam positioned the staple gun against the booth's wooden frame, the blue bunting held taut beneath it. "Firm pressure, straight angle, squeeze decisively. Don't hesitate or it'll jam again." He demonstrated, and a staple secured the bunting neatly to the wood. He moved a few inches down and repeated the process. "Your turn." Ellie took the staple gun, her fingers brushing his in the exchange. She mimicked his stance, her brow furrowed in concentration as she lined up the shot. The staple fired with a satisfying thunk, catching the bunting perfectly. "I did it!" Her face lit with triumph. "Take that, inanimate objects." Sam couldn't help the small laugh that escaped him. "Congratulations, you've mastered basic office equipment." "Hey, it's a staple gun, not a stapler. That's at least intermediate office equipment." She fired another staple successfully. "Besides, not all of us spent our formative years learning practical skills from Coast Guard fathers." "You heard that?" Ellie glanced at him, something warm in her gaze. "I did. I always pay attention, especially to people who usually don't tell much about themselves." Sam didn't know how to respond to that, so he focused on straightening the bunting as they moved down the booth front together, Ellie stapling every few inches with growing confidence. "So," she said after a moment, "is your reluctant volunteerism an annual tradition? Or did Marta apply special pressure this year?" "Annual torture," Sam confirmed. "She knows which buttons to push. The 'you're the only one tall enough' button, or the 'you secretly enjoy feeling useful' button." He shot her a look. "There is no 'secretly enjoy' button." Ellie's tone conveyed cheerful disbelief. "That's why you spent an hour teaching teenagers proper knot techniques, instead of just doing it yourself and leaving. They needed to learn." "Safety issue." "Of course." "Purely practical. No satisfaction in passing on knowledge to the next generation." Sam fell silent, focusing on the bunting as they reached the end of the first booth. He wasn't accustomed to being read so accurately by anyone, much less a woman he barely knew. It unsettled him, the sense of being seen through the walls he'd maintained for decades. "Next booth?" Ellie asked, untroubled by his lack of response. "Sure." They worked their way down the row of stalls, falling into an efficient rhythm. Ellie handled the stapling with growing confidence, while Sam held the bunting taut and straight. Around them, the festival setup continued, vendors arriving with goods, volunteers erecting the main stage, Lena's voice periodically rising above the general din as she directed traffic. "So what exactly is this festival celebrating?" Ellie asked as they started on the fourth booth. Marta mentioned something about salmon, but then Bill Carter said it was originally a timber festival, and Lena called it an appreciation of coastal culture, which could mean anything. Sam snorted. It's celebrating tourism dollars mostly. But officially, it started as a loggers' competition back when the mill was still running. When the mill closed, it morphed into a fishing celebration, then gradually became whatever brings in the most visitors. Harbor Pointe's practical that way. Evolving with the times, Ellie nodded. Smart. Do you remember the original logger festivals? Vaguely. I was a kid. Sam adjusted a section of bunting that had begun to sag. My father competed in the axe throwing. Never won, but came close a few times. Is he still in town? No. Moved to Alaska after my mother died. Remarried up there. Sam offered this information matter-of-factly, surprised at how easily the words came. He rarely spoke of his father, not out of any actual pain, but simply because few people asked. We exchange Christmas cards. Occasional phone calls. Ellie absorbed this without pressing for more details. Axe throwing, huh? Is that still part of the festival? No. Liability concerns. Sam's mouth quirked. Can't imagine why letting drunk loggers hurl sharp objects might worry insurance companies. Ellie laughed, the sound drawing glances from nearby volunteers. What a shame. I've always wanted to try throwing an axe. It looks very satisfying in movies. It is, Sam admitted. Therapeutic, even. You've done it? Worked in logging before the fire? Part of the job, part of the culture. Were you good at it? Sam allowed himself a small smile. Very. Modest, too. False modesty's pointless. I could hit a playing card at 30 feet. Ellie whistled, looking genuinely impressed. Now that I'd pay to see. Festival admission's free. You'll have to find other entertainment. I'm sure I will. Ellie fired another staple, then paused, surveying their handiwork. We make a good team. 4 booths decorated in record time. Sam glanced down the row of neatly festooned stalls. She was right. What might have taken one person all morning had been accomplished in just over an hour. Efficient, he acknowledged. That's one word for it. Ellie handed him the staple gun as they finished the final booth. Thank you for the lesson. Next time, I need to staple anything larger than a term paper. I'll be prepared. Happy to help. Sam. Ellie. Perfect timing. They turned to find Lena approaching, clipboard still in hand, her short black hair now tied back with a bandana as the morning's activities intensified. The booths look fantastic, she said, making a check on her list. But we've got a slight crisis. The delivery truck with all the paper lanterns just arrived, but they need to be assembled before they can be hung. Could you two handle that? We've got teenagers on ladders now, but no one patient enough for the assembly. Before Sam could formulate a refusal, Ellie nodded. Of course. Where are they? Community Hall kitchen. They've taken over the tables there. Lena made another check on her clipboard. You're a lifesaver, Ellie. And Sam, she hesitated, clearly expecting resistance. Fine, he said shortly, surprising both women. I said 3 hours. Still got one left. Lena beamed. Thank you. Stop by my booth later. I'll set aside one of those cedar carvings you liked last year. As she hurried away, Ellie gave Sam a curious look. Cedar carvings? Small whales, Sam admitted, feeling oddly embarrassed. She carries them in her gallery. Good craftsmanship. You collect wooden whales? Not collect, just appreciate. Ellie's smile widened. Sam Watson, you're full of surprises. The walk to the community hall took them through the heart of Harbor Pointe, where festival preparations had transformed the usually quiet streets. Banners hung from lampposts, volunteers placed potted flowers along sidewalks, and local musicians tuned instruments on the temporary stage in the town square. The community hall stood just off Main Street, a sturdy building with a stone foundation and wooden shingle siding that had weathered to a soft gray. The large kitchen buzzed with activity as volunteers prepared food for various booths. At the far end, several large boxes had been stacked on tables, their contents spilling out in a riot of colored paper, wire frames, and instruction sheets. "Those must be our lanterns," Ellie said, leading the way through the busy kitchen. The boxes contained hundreds of flat-packed paper lanterns in various sizes and colors. A harried-looking woman with flour-dusted hands glanced up as they approached. "Are you the lantern team?" "Thank goodness. We need these assembled and out of here within the hour so we can use the tables for pie preparation." "We're on it," Ellie assured her, already opening the nearest box. "Just point us to a clear workspace." They claimed a corner table and began unpacking. The lanterns came with minimal instructions: wire frames that needed to be shaped into circles or squares, delicate paper that attached via small metal clips, and battery-operated LED lights to be secured in the center. "Not complicated," Sam observed, examining the components. "Just fiddly. Perfect for your bee-handling fingers," Ellie agreed, already shaping a wire frame. "I'll assemble the frames if you want to attach the paper." "You seem like you'd be more patient with the delicate parts." Sam raised an eyebrow at this assessment, but didn't argue. They settled into a production line, Ellie forming the wire frames and Sam carefully clipping the colorful paper to each one. The work required concentration but not conversation, allowing them to establish a comfortable rhythm. As they worked, Sam's gaze occasionally drifted to Ellie's hands, artist's hands, strong and capable, with short nails and paint embedded in the cuticles. They moved with the same focused precision he recognized in himself when tending his hives. No wasted motion, no unnecessary flourishes. "You're staring," Ellie said without looking up from the wire frame she was bending. Sam returned his attention to the lantern in his hands. "Professional curiosity. You handle wire like you've done it before. Sculpture class in college, wire and plaster. I was terrible at it, but the technique stuck." She finished the frame and passed it to him. "Your turn. Why do you really collect wooden whales?" "I told you I don't collect them." "You appreciate them enough that Lena knows to set them aside for you." "No difference." Sam sighed, knowing she wouldn't drop the subject. "My grandfather carved them," he said finally, "when I was a kid. He'd sit on the porch, whittle these little whales from cedar scraps. Said they were good luck charms for fishermen." "Was he a fisherman?" "Logger, like most men in Harbor Pointe back then. But he had a cousin lost at sea, so he carved whales as remembrance, I guess." Sam attached the final clip to the lantern and set it in the completed pile. "The ones Lena carries remind me of his work. Good grain, clean lines." Ellie nodded, her expression thoughtful rather than pitying. "I like that. Objects that connect us to people we've lost, not as replacements, but as touchstones." "Exactly." Sam felt a rush of gratitude for her understanding. Touchstones. They continued assembling lanterns, the pile of completed ones growing steadily. Around them, the kitchen bustled with increasing activity as the festival's opening hour approached. Volunteers carried trays of food out to booths, called instructions to each other, and often consulted Lena's master schedule pinned to the wall. "So, what exactly happens at this festival?" Ellie asked as she shaped another frame. "Besides tourists buying overpriced crafts and eating fair food." "Live music, boat tours, kids' games. Typical small-town festival stuff." Sam attached a vibrant red paper to a frame. "Fireworks after dark over the harbor. Sounds fun. If you like crowds and noise." Ellie grinned. "Let me guess. You make your annual appearance for setup, then retreat to your cave until the invaders leave town." "More or less." "Well, I'm looking forward to it. I haven't been to a proper small-town festival since the kids were little." She handed him another completed frame. "We used to go to the Strawberry Festival in our old town every summer. Mark would eat so many chocolate-covered strawberries he'd make himself sick, and Ava always wanted to win the biggest stuffed animal at the ring toss. Did she? Never. Those games are rigged, as you know, but one year I stayed until closing and sweet-talked the booth operator into selling me the giant purple octopus she'd had her heart set on. Told him it was either that or I'd have to learn to rig a ring toss by next summer. Sam chuckled at the image of Ellie threatening a carnival worker. Did she know you bought it? Eventually. She was 12 when I finally confessed. By then, she thought it was hilarious. Ellie's expression softened with the memory. Those were good days for all the exhaustion. Everything was an adventure to them. You miss it. Parts of it. Ellie nodded. Not the sleep deprivation or the constant worry, but the wonder. The way they saw the world as this magical place full of possibilities. Yes, I miss that. Sam thought about this as he attached paper to another frame. He'd never experienced parenthood, never watched a child discover the world through fresh eyes. After the fire, after Lisa, he'd closed that door firmly, convinced his chance for that particular joy had burned, along with their future plans. You're good at it, he said finally, being a mother. Ellie looked up, surprise and pleasure crossing her face. Thank you. That means a lot, actually. You spend 26 years wondering if you're doing it right, and then suddenly they're grown and it's too late to change your approach. They turned out well. Doctor and environmental scientist. You did something right. We'll see. The final verdict isn't in until they're 40 and telling their therapists all the ways I scarred them for life. Sam snorted. Pessimist. Realist, Ellie corrected with a smile. Parenting is the world's longest-term investment with absolutely no guaranteed returns. Sounds like beekeeping. All that work and sometimes the whole hive collapses anyway. Exactly. But when it works, when you get that perfect honey harvest or your kid calls just to tell you about their day, it's worth every minute. They shared a look of mutual understanding, a bridge forming between their different experiences of nurturing and loss. Sam felt something stir in his chest, a loosening of the tight bands he'd wrapped around his emotions decades ago. 1 hour's up, he said abruptly, glancing at the clock on the kitchen wall. I should go. Ellie looked at the pile of completed lanterns, then at the boxes still to be assembled. We made good progress, but there's still a lot left. Are you sure you can't stay a little longer? Sam hesitated. His instinct, honed by years of limited social interaction, urged him to leave as planned. 3 hours, not a minute more, he'd told Marta. But the prospect of returning to his empty cottage while Ellie remained here, working alone among strangers, bothered him in a way he couldn't quite articulate. I could stay, he heard himself say, until these are done. Ellie's smile warmed her entire face. Wonderful. I was dreading tackling these alone. She passed him another frame. So, Sam, while we work, tell me more about these fireworks. Are they worth staying in town for, or is that just tourist propaganda? They're decent, Sam admitted. Bill Carter's brother-in-law runs a fireworks company in Portland. Professional display, not just amateurs with Roman candles. Where's the best viewing spot? Depends what you want. The pier gets crowded. Tourists, noise. Sam focused on attaching a blue paper lantern. The beach north of town is quieter. Fewer people, better view of the whole harbor. That sounds perfect. Is that where you watch from? Sam glanced up, realizing too late the trap he'd walked into. Who says I watch at all? The fact that you know the best viewing spot. Ellie's eyes danced with amusement. Busted beekeeper. You enjoy the festival more than you admit. I enjoy fireworks, Sam corrected. From a distance. Without crowds. Reasonable. Ellie handed him another completed frame. Any chance you'd be willing to show me this quiet beach spot? I'd hate to end up in the tourist crush by mistake. The question hung between them, ostensibly casual but weighted with potential. Sam knew he should refuse. Sharing fireworks felt perilously close to a date, to the kind of social engagement he'd avoided like the plague. But the thought of Ellie watching alone, or worse, not finding the secluded beach at all, bothered him more than the prospect of company. "I could show you," he said finally. "Meet at the northern trailhead, just past the old mill." 8 o'clock. Bring a jacket. Gets cold after sunset. Ellie nodded, her expression giving nothing away beyond simple gratitude. "Perfect, I'll bring snacks." "Not necessary." "Necessary for me. I can't watch fireworks without proper provisions. It's a rule." The corner of Sam's mouth twitched upward. "Your rules seem conveniently specific." "I've had 48 years to develop them. Very refined system." They continued assembling lanterns, the pile of completed ones growing steadily. Around them, the kitchen hummed with activity. But Sam found he didn't mind the bustle or the occasional curious glance thrown their way. The work absorbed him, and Ellie's company proved surprisingly comfortable, not demanding constant conversation, but offering it when it felt natural. By the time they finished the last lantern, almost 2 hours had passed beyond Sam's original commitment. Teenagers arrived to transport the completed lanterns to the pier, exclaiming over the colors and designs as they carefully packed them into carrying crates. "Mission accomplished," Ellie said as they watched the last crate leave the kitchen. "Thanks for staying. It would have taken me all day alone." "No problem." Sam gathered the empty boxes and wire scraps, tidying their workspace with habitual neatness. "I should get back to the apiary. Second honey extraction tomorrow." "The famous extraction I've been hearing about? Any chance that invitation to observe still stands?" Sam nodded, surprised by how much he wanted her to see this part of his work. "Sunday afternoon, 2 o'clock. Wear clothes that can get sticky." "I'll be there." With bells on, as they say. Ellie smiled, although not actual bells. "I assume that would agitate the bees." "Yeep." Their eyes met, and Sam felt that same strange warmth in his chest, as if long dormant parts of himself were slowly, cautiously awakening. It terrified him. It intrigued him. It made him want to run back to his cottage and at the same time to stay right where he was, in this crowded kitchen with this funny woman. "Well," Ellie said after a moment, "I should help Marta with the pie booth setup. She threatened dire consequences if I'm late." "Marta's threats are never idle," Sam agreed, grateful for the natural conclusion to their time together. "Okay then. Northern Trailhead, 8 o'clock. I'll be there. With snacks, not bells." As Sam walked back to his truck, he found his customary irritation with the festival noticeably absent. The crowd still swarmed the pier, the noise still grated on his nerves, and the forced cheerfulness of the decoration still struck him as excessive. But oddly, he was now looking forward to festival night instead of dreading it. All because he'd be watching fireworks with a woman who collected purple octopuses for her daughter and teased him about his secret whale appreciation. Harbor Pointe's famous summer festival had just become more interesting than he'd ever expected it to be.